What's up, everybody? Hope you all had a great weekend. Welcome back to the channel for the second episode of my season standings prediction series. In the last video, we did the Pacific Division. If you haven't seen that video yet, go check it out. As you can see, today we're going to be doing the Central Division, so finishing off the Western Conference. And I will say, I feel like the Central is kind of easier to predict this year than the Pacific is. And remember, these are just my opinions. I don't expect to get everything right, so don't take this too seriously. Have fun with it, and be sure to let me know what your Central Division predictions are down below in the comment section. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get things started. Finishing 8th place in the Central Division this season, I'm going with the Chicago Blackhawks. Yes, I have them finishing below the Arizona Coyotes. I expect Chicago to be one of the two worst teams in the league, third worst at best. I really think this team is going to struggle to score goals when you consider the fact that they got rid of Dylan Strome and Alex DeBrincat, also Dominic Kubalik, who scored 15 this past season. Sure, they still have Patrick Kane on the roster. Obviously, he is one of the elite offensive players in the game, but I don't expect Patrick Kane to be on the roster for the entire season. I'd be surprised if he even makes it to the trade deadline as a member of the Blackhawks. And he's not the only guy that I expect them to ship out. Max Domi and Athanasiou, who both signed matching one-year $3 million deals. I expect them to be used as trade bait at the deadline as well. So I definitely think they're going to be an offensively challenged team. I'm not a big fan of the defense either, and obviously their goaltending, pretty self-explanatory. It's probably not going to win them too many games. Peter Mrazek was kind of a train wreck this past season as a member of the Maple Leafs, who are obviously a much better team than the Blackhawks are right now, so I can't imagine Mrazek is going to put up great numbers playing behind this Blackhawks team. So I'm going with the Blackhawks finishing last place in the Central Division, but in a year where Connor Bedard is draft eligible, is going to be going first overall, it's not the end of the world. Moving on now to the number 7 spot in the Central Division. Obviously, I'm putting the Arizona Coyotes here, so I have them moving up one spot in the division from last year, but I don't expect them to really be much better. I just expect the Blackhawks to be a lot worse, and in reality, I could easily see a scenario where the Hawks are 7th and the Arizona Coyotes are 8th. I can definitely say I'm confident in the fact that those two teams are going to be the bottom two in whatever order. Now, that being said, there definitely is some things to be excited about if you're a Coyotes fan. Cooley and Genther are looking like blue chip prospects, and me, just as an outside fan, on the outside looking in, I'm excited to watch Coyotes home games this year, or at least at the start of the season, to see how that atmosphere comes across on TV. The Coyotes came out and said that they expect to sell out every home game, which, you would hope an NHL team could sell out every home game with an attendance of like 5,000 people, but I think a packed small arena like that is going to be a really crazy atmosphere for an NHL game, and who knows, maybe that can benefit the Arizona Coyotes, give them some much needed energy when they play on home ice. But like the Blackhawks, this is a team that I definitely think is going to struggle in all aspects of the game. Offensively, sure, they have Schmaltz and Keller and Lawson Krause, who scored 20 goals this past season, but how much can those three really provide? There isn't much depth up front at all. The blue line doesn't look great, especially when you consider the fact that they're probably going to trade Chikrin before the deadline. And in terms of goaltending, well, I'll put it like this. If you're a casual NHL fan, not a hardcore fan that follows, every team and watches games every night, you probably don't even know who the Arizona Coyotes' two goaltenders are heading into this season just off the top of your head. So that should tell you all you need to know. Moving on now to the 6th spot in the Central Division. This is where things get a little bit tough for me. I'm actually going with the Dallas Stars here, so I have them dropping from 4th place last year to 6th place this year. All in all, they had a pretty quiet offseason. They definitely made a little bit of a splash in free agency signing Mason Marchment, but I do view that as a little bit of a risk. Even though Marchment was fantastic this past season for the Panthers, it wasn't in a huge sample size, and his ice time was pretty low as well. Is he going to be able to keep up that production in a bigger role? We'll see. I think this is a solid team. I definitely don't expect them to be, in the basement of the league. I easily expect them to be in the wild card hunt for the majority of the season. Jake Ottinger is fantastic. This is going to be his first real full season as Dallas Stars starter, and obviously we saw what he's capable of doing in the first round against the Calgary Flames. He can steal you games, but there are definitely some things about this team that concerns me. The core that they have had there for a while is getting up there in age. Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn aren't the players they once were. At some point, you have to expect Joe Pavelski to kind of regress a little bit. Now, obviously, they have some elite young talent as well in Roope Hintz, Miro Heiskanen, and Jason Robertson, but Jason Robertson still isn't signed, and we are 5 days away from the regular season beginning. That's when the games start over in the Czech Republic between Nashville and San Jose. I feel like it's safe to say at this point that that contract dispute and this whole Jason Robertson saga is going to bleed into the regular season. Dallas only has about $7 million in cap space right now. Jason Robertson probably wants more than that. Why wouldn't he after the season he just had? If this turns into like a Nylander situation where Jason Robertson sits out until the very last possible second, then obviously that is not going to do any favors for the Dallas Dallas Stars. I'm sure you're all familiar with Grab, who's an NHL YouTuber like myself. I seen he posted a video the other day saying the Jason Robertson saga got worse, offer sheet talk, trade talk, all that kind of stuff. So it definitely feels like that is a big dark cloud kind of hanging over the Dallas Stars right now. I have them finishing 6th place in the Central this year, but I could see them finishing as high as 4th, especially if they get Jason Robertson signed, here in the next week or so. Moving on now to 5th place in the Central Division, I'm going with the Winnipeg Jets. I think they're going to have a bit of a bounce back year. They failed to reach 90 points this past season. I feel like this season they're going to be in that 95, 96 point range. I think the coaching change is really going to benefit them. Bringing in a guy like Rick Bowness, it really seems like that locker room needed a new mentality, a fresh start. Definitely some things to like from the preseason for the Jets so far as well. I know it's just preseason and you can't read into it a ton, but Cole Perfetti and Ville Heinola both look great. So those guys coming in, both likely making the team, and Perfetti especially playing a pretty significant role in the top 6. I think that could inject some life into this roster. And also, and this is kind of the biggest thing, I really don't expect Connor Hellebuyck to look as average as he did this past season. We know when he's on his game, he's one of the absolute best goaltenders on the planet. So if he can have a Vezina caliber year, which we know he's capable of doing, this is a roster that definitely has the talent to be in the wildcard hunt and potentially squeak into one of those wildcard spots come the end of the season. Getting into the top 4 spots now in the Central Division, finishing 4th place, I'm going with the Minnesota Wild, so I have them dropping down 2 spots from 2nd last year to 4th this season. The Wild were amazing last season, one of the better regular season teams in the league, and I think they're going to be good again. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but I definitely don't expect them to replicate that regular season success, especially when you consider the fact that they no longer have a guy like Kevin Fiala to provide depth scoring on that second line, behind their top line of Zuccarello, Kaprizov, and Hartman. And not only did they lose Kevin Fiala, they didn't get anything in return in that trade for him that's going to help them win now. They just got future assets, obviously because they just couldn't re-sign Kevin Fiala. They didn't have the cap space for it, so I definitely feel like they're going to miss him. I also kind of expect to see a little bit of a regression in the production and game of Ryan Hartman. I think it's going to be hard for him to replicate the success and the numbers he put up this past season. Aside from that though, they're bringing back mostly the same team, and again, like I said, I think they're still going to be good. I still think they're going to make the playoffs. Definitely some really exciting young players to look forward to watching on the Wild this year. I think Boldy's going to have a huge sophomore season. You got rookies most likely making the team like Kalen Addison and Marco Rossi. They brought back Fleury. They're going to have him for the entirety of the regular season, and he played really well to finish out the season as a member of the Wild, in the games he played in the regular season after the deadline. All things considered, especially their current cap situation, this is a team in relatively good shape, so I definitely expect them to have another year where they make the playoffs. So I got the Wild finishing 4th. Moving on out of the 3rd place spot in the Central, I'm going with the Nashville Predators, so I have them getting a little bit better here, jumping from the 5th spot to the 3rd spot. The Preds, I feel like, had a really underrated offseason. They didn't do a ton, they weren't incredibly active, but the moves they did make, I really liked them. Nino Niederreiter, I think it's going to be a welcome sight in the top 6. That's a guy that can easily get you 20 to 25 goals. And then on the back end, they took advantage of Tampa Bay in the cap situation that they were in and were able to acquire Ryan McDonagh without really giving up anything, taking anything off the active roster. So now you look at that top 4 in the blue line, you got Roman Josi, Alexander Carrier, McDonagh, and Ekholm. One of the better top 4s in the league for sure. I expect this to be a really good defensive team. And then behind that decor, you have one of the best goaltenders in the league in UC Saros, who was actually my Vezina trophy pick for this season if you watched my award predictions video. And up front, I mean, if Johansson and Duchesne can keep up the kind of production they put up last season, I don't think this team is going to have any problems scoring goals. They have nice depth up front as well. I really like that third line of Trennan, Sissons, and Jeannot, so I think Nashville's in really good shape. I expect them to have a strong regular season. Moving on now to the number 2 spot in the Central Division. I know I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but hear me out. I got the Colorado Avalanche finishing 2nd in the Central, so not winning the division in the regular season. So like I said, hear me out. Reason number 1, we see this happen a lot with, the really elite teams that just want to win in the playoffs. They don't really have anything to prove in the regular season. Like the Tampa Bay Lightning, for an example, they've made it to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, and in all 3 of those regular seasons, they didn't win their division. I think Colorado is going to kind of coast through a lot of the regular season. We know they're going to make the playoffs. They know they're going to make the playoffs. And even though this is a team that is still one of the Stanley Cup favorites, probably most people's Stanley Cup favorite heading into the season, they did get worse over the offseason. There's no denying that. There's a pretty big hole in terms of the number 2 center spot. The goaltending is a little bit of a question mark now with Darcy Kemper in Washington. I think Georgiev and Francouz is going to be good enough, personally, especially playing behind a team like Colorado, but who knows? So those are some of the main reasons as to why I have the Avalanche finishing 2nd. And now finishing out the video, finishing 1st place in the Central, you guys know by process of elimination, I'm going with the St. Louis Blues this year. I really like the St. Louis Blues roster a lot. I think in terms of the Western Conference, they were definitely the closest team team to the Colorado Avalanche. They put up the biggest fight against them in the playoffs. This team is incredibly loaded and deep up front, especially now with the emergence of the likes of Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas. You don't need, guys like Braden Shen and Vladimir Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly to be your best forwards anymore. They didn't really lose a step on the back end with Pietrangelo leaving and signing in Vegas. I think the St. Louis Blues are going to be one of the better regular season teams in the league this year. My one question mark is definitely in net. Obviously, we know Jordan Binnington can be up and down. He was shaky for the majority of this past regular season. He just wasn't very good, but he had Ville Husso there to kind of bail him out and carry a lot of the load in the regular season. He's not going to have that luxury this year. Thomas Greiss is the backup now. That's quite a significant downgrade from Husso, but if Binnington can just give the St. Louis Blues average to slightly above average NHL goaltending, which we know he's capable of doing, then I think that puts the Blues in a really good position to compete for the division title this season. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Those were my Central Division preview and predictions for the 2022-23 NHL season. Like I said at the beginning, these are just my opinions. I don't expect everyone to agree with them, so be sure to get down there in the comment section down below and let me know your Central Division predictions for this upcoming season. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. And while you're down there, if you could, please be sure to drop a like on the video. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content like this all through the new season, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.